Joining me in the studio, and Kratz, a specialist in US affairs and politics. Thank you very much for being with us on France 24. What do you make, first of all, of the new revelations that the Democrats have announced, these text messages and letters, which they say show Trump okayed spying on the US ambassador to Ukraine? Right. That's a pretty big deal, isn't it?
Well, that particular item of spying on the American ambassador is the really new thing. Otherwise, the revelations are not so much revelations as damning condemnations and confirmations of what we all knew beforehand, namely that Trump knew all about it, which is what started the impeachment process in the first place. So that particular point of the ambassador, the American ambassador being spied upon by Americans, I think will sit very poorly with the American public. And since this whole trial is really in some ways dependent on the perception that the senators who are judging it will take away from what they think the public is thinking and whether there has been a shift. At this point, the polls show that there has been no shift at all, that the positions are pretty solid, that about the Republicans are all pretty much against impeachment. But one feels a certain movement in public opinion, however slight at this point, coming maybe to the conclusion that too much is too much, like this particular spying on an American public servant. And so it's not going to mean that Trump that the Republican senators are going to change camps, but they might conduct the trial in a slightly different way, depending on whether or not there is a lot of pressure from the public.
And crucial to that, of course, will be whether or not there are witnesses. The Democrats desperately want people like Lev Parnas and John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, to testify. And they're counting on these four moderate, if you like, anti-Trump Republicans, people like Mitt Romney, Susan Collins. They could really decide how this trial goes, couldn't they?
Well, they could decide on whether or not the witnesses are called to trial. I don't think they're going to decide that Trump is not going to be impeached, because in the end they probably will close ranks with the Republican majority. But I'm not sure that when you're saying that the Democrats are desperately anxious for witnesses to be called upon, they're also it's a double-edged sword, because if you start calling witnesses, then the Republicans are going to start calling witnesses against Biden and possibly Hunter Biden himself to the floor. So this wouldn't serve the Democrats very well.
The son of Joe Biden, just for those who don't know, the son of Joe Biden, who took a job in Ukraine, and Trump has been talking about these unsubstantiated allegations of corruption against Joe.
And besides, nobody knows what John Bolton is likely to say. I mean,
but he said he wants to testify.
Yeah, he wants to testify, but nobody knows what he's going to say exactly.
Right. What do you make of that? Because he was a staunch Trump ally, wasn't he?
He wants to make sure, perhaps, that he's not involved in all those turpitude. He wants to distance himself from this kind of rather sordid, those sordid goings on in Ukraine, because he really probably had a small part in it, or smaller than some of the others. I mean, the other big revelation is that the Attorney General Barr also knew exactly what was going on. That is the Minister of Justice of the United States of America. So the whole thing is...
Trump himself has said that he would not be against testifying. I'm sure many Republicans would rather that he didn't. But isn't there a risk for Democrats that he might kind of turn this into his own mouthpiece, his own show?
Yes, there is a risk for the Democrats. It's not a win-win situation for the Democrats. They're risking quite a lot in that situation, and that's why I'm saying they're not necessarily that anxious to have witnesses appear, because there'll be witnesses for their camp, but there'll be witnesses against them as well. So, and from the legal point of view, there really is no requirement for other witnesses. So. We will all find out next Tuesday how the proceedings will go on.
1 p.m. local time next Tuesday. We'll be watching that. All right, Anne Kratz, thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, over in Russia, Parliament